Have you ever sat down to write, put on the perfect playlist, opened up your manuscript, and then realized that the music that was meant to help you focus is actually pulling you out of your story? Or maybe you need silence, but silence doesn't always feel peaceful. Maybe the moment everything goes quiet, your inner critic suddenly gets louder. Every sentence feels exposed. Every pause feels like pressure. And instead of feeling focused, you feel watched by the blank page. Or maybe you're the kind of writer who actually writes better when there's life happening all around you. A cafe humming in the background, rain on the roof, people moving, talking, existing nearby. Not because you're distracted, but because that gentle layer of sound somehow takes the pressure off and helps the words begin to move. Today, my friends, we're talking about the soundtrack of your writing. Music, silence, noise, rhythm, lyrics, background sound, and how all of it can either support your creative flow or quietly work against the way you are wired to write. Because the question isn't just, should writers listen to music while they write? The better question is, what sound environment has your brain learned to associate with writing? And is that sound environment actually helping you write? And that's what we're going to dive into today. So stay with me. If you feel called to write a book, but writer's block, procrastination, and self-doubt keep pulling you from the page, you're not alone, and you're not meant to stay stuck. Hi, I'm Madison Michaels, author and life coach, and I've created this podcast as a creative space grounded in faith and mindset transformations to help you break through your blocks, gain creative clarity, and finally finish the book you're meant to write. So grab your cup of liquid gold and let's write the darn book together. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Write the Darn Book. I'm your host, Madison Michaels, and today's episode is Writing Wednesday, which means we're looking at the practical side of the writing process, but through the Write the Darn Book lens of mindset, wiring, self-trust, and finishing. And today we're going to talk about something that might seem small at first, but can make a huge difference to how easily you enter your writing flow. We're talking about sound, the music that helps you feel the emotional world of your book or pulls you out of the sentence, the silence that gives your story room or makes the inner critic loud, the background noise that distracts you or gently takes the pressure off so the words can begin to move. Because sound isn't just background. Sound shapes states. It affects your focus. And over time, sound can become a cue that your brain associates with writing. That's the piece I really want to explore with you today. Because sometimes the sound environment you think you need isn't random at all. It might be the sound environment your brain and your body have learnt to connect with your story, with your focus, your creativity, or your safety. And once you understand that, you can begin to use sound more deliberately. So grab your cup of liquid gold and settle in, and let's talk about the soundtrack of your writing. Today, I want to start with my own process because this is one of the things I do when I'm beginning a new book. Before I even start plotting out my book or planning the story or even fully understanding my characters, I create a playlist. Now, this won't be for everyone, depending on your modality and your personality type, but for me, this works really well. The playlist I create isn't just random songs I like. It's about the story itself. I listen to songs and I just get an immediate sense, is this song fitting my story? Is this going to fit the characters? And I trust my intuition. It's about the ambience it creates. It's about the theme of my story that it stirs up inside me and the emotional atmosphere of the book that the music supports. Essentially, the songs I choose help me to feel like I'm stepping into the world of my story and my characters. So I get a real good sense of the characters themselves, it creates some scenes in my head, and it helps me understand the the tone of the story before I even have started planning and plotting it out. Now, for me, what that's actually doing is creating neural pathways linking those songs that I have worked out and decided that are going to be part of this story's playlist. That's actually creating neural pathways. Every time I hear them, it associates in my mind my story and my characters with that music. So when I think about the book, when I start to imagine the characters and turn over the ideas in my head, that playlist playing in the background links the music with my book in my brain. So the more I listen, the stronger that association becomes. And eventually, when I hear those songs, I'm not just listening to the music anymore. My mind knows, oh, okay, we're in that story. We're going into that world now. It's time to actually be with the characters in the story. And that's one of the most powerful things sound can do. It can become a doorway and a state cue into your writing itself. So it literally can help your brain and body shift into the world of the book before you've even typed a single word. And that's not just about music. For another writer, the cue might actually be silence. Their brain might have learnt when the room is quiet, this is when I can write. This is when I can access the world of my story. For another writer, it might be the low hum of a cafe because that's where they've always felt the most creatively awake. For someone else, it could even be rain sounds or white noise or ocean waves or some instrument that they associate with a writing session and they've done so for years. So the real question becomes, what sound environment has your brain already connected with your writing? And is it working for you? This is where I want to reframe sound. Sound isn't just a preference. It's not just, well, I like music or I like silence or I like cafes. Sound can become a cue for your nervous system to access your creativity and your writing. A cue is something your brain recognizes as a signal and it says, this is what we do now. That's why rituals around writing can be so powerful. When you sit in the same chair, light the same candle, open the same notebook, or play the same playlist, or make the same cup of coffee before you're writing, your brain starts to recognize all of those things as patterns. It begins to understand this pattern or what I'm doing is associated with writing time. And sound can be one of the strongest parts of that pattern. If you've trained your brain to write with music, music might help you enter the work faster. If you've trained your brain to write with silence, then silence might be what helps your mind settle and focus for your writing. And if you've trained your brain to write with background noise, that gentle hum might become part of what helps your body relax into the page. None of those things are wrong, but they're worth noticing because sometimes the cue that you've created is helping you, and sometimes the cue you've created is making writing harder. You might have trained yourself to believe you can only write with the perfect playlist playing in the background, which means if you can't find the right songs, then you delay the writing until you can find them. You might have trained yourself to believe you can only write in complete silence, which means one noisy day in your house throws you completely off. You might have trained yourself to write in chaos or under pressure. So when you finally have that calm time available, your brain doesn't know how to enter the writing. And this is where the work becomes really useful. You don't have to judge the cue. You just get to ask, is this cue serving me and my writing? If it is, that's fantastic. Use it, harness it. Make it a part of your writing process on purpose. But if it isn't serving you, then you can begin to experiment. You can create a new cue. You can teach your creative system a different way into the work and the page. Mental chatter, but complicated music or unpredictable noise might give your brain too much extra information to process. And we can also look at sound through the bird writing personalities too. A dove writer might need sound that feels emotionally safe and soothing. Something gentle, familiar, and calming might help you settle into the page and feel supported while you write. Whereas an owl writer might need quiet, order, and minimal sensory interruptions so they can think clearly and hold the structure of the scene in their mind. A peacock writer might find that silence is too flat or it feels too heavy or too pressurized. Now, this is where wiring matters because different writers respond to sound differently. And if you've ever thought, how can that writer produce 3,000 words in a busy cafe when I can't even think when someone is breathing too loudly near me? This is why. Your brain processes sensory input in its own unique way. But I want to be really clear here. This isn't as simple as matching one type of writer with one type of sound. It's far more layered than that. Your sound needs are shaped by three main things: how you process, how you're wired, and what your brain has already learnt to associate with writing. So these are starting points, not rules, and please keep that in mind. A visual writer might find that music helps sharpen the images in their mind. A cinematic soundtrack might help them to see scenes more vividly and clearly, almost like a camera has come into focus. But another visual writer might need quiet so that they can stay inside what they're seeing. An auditory writer might be deeply sensitive to sound because they hear the rhythm and voice of the story so clearly. Music might help them to hear the world of the book, or it could actually compete with the manuscript and, the lyrics or conversations, that unpredictable noise might actually pull an auditory writer out of the words. A kinesthetic writer might use sound to access the feelings. Music might help them to drop into the emotion of the scene. But conversely, if their sound doesn't match the emotional truth of the scene, it could actually pull them into the wrong state. An auditory digital writer might have a very active inner voice. They might think in words, logic, structure, internal commentary, and sometimes predictable sound like rain or white noise or soft instrumental loops can help settle that thinking mind. But sometimes it also has the opposite effect. I'm an auditory digital writer myself, and I often use a playlist on loop when I'm writing. I'll usually have one main song come back every second or third song, and that song becomes an anchor. My family usually gets very sick of my playlists by the end of a book because I do have them on a loop. But for me, every time I hear that loop and it returns to the main song, it orientates me back into the story. It's like my brain hears it and goes, yes, this is the world we're in. We're focused on the story, on the characters. Let's inhabit that. So even if you assume an auditory digital writer would need silence, it isn't always true. Remember, we are uniquely wired differently from every single other person. So if a sound cue has been trained into your process, it can become part of how your brain organizes itself around the book. So keep that in mind and go with what feels right for you. We can also look at it through the lens of bird writing personalities as well. Now, a dove writer might need sound that feels emotionally safe and soothing, whereas an owl writer could need some quiet or order or predictable sound so they can think clearly. Now, I'm an owl as well, right? So that predictability of the soundtrack on a loop appeals to my owl. Now, for a peacock writer, they can find silence can feel way too flat or filled with pressure, which might mean that they need music or cafe noise or the feeling of life happening around them to wake up their creative flow. An eagle writer might use sound strategically, choosing silence for revisions, music for momentum, or one specific track to push them into action. But again, combinations matter. A dove peacock writer might need sound that feels both safe and creatively alive, whereas an owl eagle writer might need quiet for structure but music for momentum. A peacock owl might love atmosphere but still need the sound to be predictable enough to focus. So please don't use any of this to put yourself in a box. Use it as information. Your sound needs might reflect your wiring, your current season, or a cue that you've trained over time, sometimes without even realizing that you've trained yourself for that sound cue. The real question that you should be asking yourself is, what sound environment helps me to enter the work, to stay with the work, and to come back to the work again tomorrow? That's what we're looking for. Not the right sound, your sound. So let's look at the three main sound environments most writers move between. First, music. Music can be an emotional doorway into your story. It can help you return to the feeling of the book very quickly, especially if life keeps interrupting your creative rhythm. Sometimes the hardest part of writing isn't the writing itself, it's returning to the page. It's getting back into the emotional atmosphere of the book after you've been working a different role, caring for people, answering messages, or simply being a human in the world and having life happening all around you. That's why a book music playlist can be so powerful for some writers. It can bridge the gap, and it says to your brain and body, we're entering this world of my book right now. But music is powerful precisely because it changes your state. So the wrong music can also take you into the wrong state, and that's something to keep in mind too. If you're writing a quiet, intimate scene and you're listening to something huge and dramatic or perhaps rock music, you might inflate the scene beyond what it needs. If you're writing sharp dialogue and listening to lyrics, your characters' voices might get muddied by those lyrics. If you're revising and you're listening to music that makes you feel deeply emotional, you might struggle to make clean, structural decisions because you're inside the feeling rather than looking at the scene clearly. So music can be a doorway into your creativity, but remember, you get to choose which door you're opening. Second is silence. Now, silence can be incredibly supportive for some, but not for other writers. So you've got to use it where you feel guided to. Silence gives the manuscript room. It can allow the voice of the story to come forward without competition. So it can be especially useful when you're revising, line editing, or listening for the rhythms of the words. For some writers, though, silence itself has become the cue. Having that quiet room, the stillness, the lack of interruption, that might be what you've trained your brain to think, this is where we write. And if that's you and it works, honour that. Protect it where you can. But silence can also be confronting. Some writers think that they should write in silence, but silence actually makes their inner critic louder. The house gets quiet, the document opens up, and suddenly every doubt has a microphone in your head. What if this is terrible? What if I've lost the thread? What if I never finish? In that case, the issue might not be silence itself. It might be that silence is creating too much space for unhelpful internal noise to fill it. And if that's you, gentle background sound might help soften the pressure. Which brings us to the third sound environment, background noise. And this is where a lot of writers misunderstand themselves. Some writers genuinely write better with life happening all around them. A cafe, a library, the gentle hum of people nearby. And if that's you, it doesn't mean you're undisciplined or easily distracted. It just might mean that your creative system likes a little movement around it. Sometimes writing alone in a silent room can create too much pressure for some writers, and it can make the writing feel too precious, too isolated, and perhaps even too loaded. But when you're in a cafe, you become one person out of many, and you're not alone with the entire weight of the book on your shoulders. You're just there with your coffee, your laptop, and the page. For some writers, that really does help to bypass overthinking and self-doubt. For others, though, it would be an absolute nightmare. And again, that's the point. Some writers need silence to go deep. Some need music to feel the world of the story. Some need background noise to reduce the pressure. There's no moral hierarchy here. Silence isn't more serious, music isn't more creative or productive, cafe noise isn't more romantic. The best sound environment is the one that helps you write. Now, I want to bring this back to a very practical question. Is your current sound cue working for you? Because it might be. Maybe you've already created a playlist that drops you straight into your story world beautifully. And if so, use it. Make it a part of your process. Let that music become a bridge into the book for you. Maybe silence genuinely helps you hear your sentences. If so, honour that. Create more pockets of quiet where you can. Don't force yourself to write in a cafe just because someone else romanticizes it. Maybe background noise helps you feel less pressured and more alive. If so, use it without judging yourself. Put on cafe ambience music, go to an actual cafe. Try rain sounds or soft household white noise. Let the sound support you where you are. But if your current sound environment isn't working for you and you're writing, play with it, experiment. If silence makes the page feel way too heavy, then try gentle sound. If music makes you feel distracted, then try instrumental tracks or no lyrics or silence. And if your playlist or trying to select the right playlist has become a procrastination rabbit hole, choose 3 tracks in advance and stick with those. And if background noise overwhelms you, protect the quiet. And if you've been relying on one sound environment for every single stage of writing, perhaps experiment with using different sounds for different tasks. You might need one sound for entering the writing. You might need a different sound for drafting and even a different sound for revision. And maybe one sound for finishing the session. So your brain also learns to associate writing with completion and celebration, not just effort. And that's a really fun thing to do. You choose one celebration track that you play when you actually finish what you've been working on. It really helps to actually wire into your nervous system that you are a writer who finishes as well. This doesn't need to be complicated, my friends. It just needs to be intentional. So let me give you one simple tool that you can use this week. I'm going to call it the sound check method. And before a writing session, I want you to ask yourself 5 quick questions. First, what am I writing today? Am I drafting? Am I revising? Am I trying to find my way into the next part of the book? Different tasks might need different sounds. Now, the second question is, what state do I need to access? So do I need calm, focus, or momentum? And sound can help you choose that state deliberately. The third question is, what sound cue has my brain already linked with this kind of writing? So is there a playlist, a silence ritual, or a familiar background noise or sound that already helps you enter into the work? The fourth question is that cue helping me today? So is the sound cue helping? And if it is, use it. If it isn't, adjust it. And the fifth question is, how will I know if it's working? Your body and your writing are going to tell you that. If the sound's working, you might notice your body settling, the scene coming closer, and the words beginning to flow. If the sound's working against you, you might feel scattered or overstimulated or strangely resistant. You might keep changing music tracks. You might reread the same sentence without moving forward. You might even find yourself listening instead of writing. And that's useful data, not failure. It's data. So this week, run a simple sound experiment. Try one writing session with the sound environment you normally use, then try one session with something different. If you usually write in silence, try soft instrumental music or ambient sound. And if you usually write with music, try silence or very minimal sound. If you usually write alone, try in a cafe for that ambience or the gentle hum of life around you. But after each session, take 1 minute to write down what you noticed. Did the sound help you to enter the work? Did it compete with your writing? Or did you feel more focused or more connected or more distracted? And most importantly, did it help move your writing? That's the test. Not whether the setup looked aesthetic, not whether another writer would approve, but did it help you to actually get words down on the page? That is the only question that matters. So, my friend, as we bring this together, I want you to remember this. The soundtrack of your writing isn't random. It's part of the way you enter the work. It can help you feel the scene, settle your body, and cross from everyday life into the world of your book. And over time, it can become a cue for your nervous system. Your brain can learn, when I hear this, we write. When the room is quiet, we write. When the playlist starts, we enter the story. So rather than asking, what should writers listen to? Ask yourself, what sound environment has my brain connected with my writing? And is that helping me in this season of my writing? If it's helping, honor it, use it, harness it, make it a part of your writing process. But if it's no longer helping, gently experiment. Because finishing a book isn't about forcing yourself into someone else's process. It's about learning how you write best, then creating the conditions that help you return to the page again and again. And as you're listening to this, maybe you're already beginning to wonder what else in your writing process has been built around what you thought you should do, rather than what actually works for the way you're wired. Because maybe you've taken all the courses, maybe you've read the craft books, maybe you've tried the templates, the routines, and all of the well-meaning advice and genuinely wanted it to work. And maybe some of it did help. But maybe after all of that, there's still a part of you wondering, why does this still feel harder than it should? Why can't I seem to find a process that actually fits me? And that's often the missing piece. It's not that you haven't learnt enough, it's that you might not have found your own unique writing recipe, the rhythm, structure, and the support that you actually need to fit the way your mind works and the way your stories come through you and onto the page. And that's exactly what we explore inside a writing personality blueprint session. It's a personalised session where we look at your bird writing personality and your natural writing patterns and the kind of process that can help you stop fighting yourself and start writing with more clarity, confidence, and flow. So if you're ready to understand your own writing process more deeply and begin building a way of writing that actually feels like it fits you, then book in your writing personality blueprint session at madisonmichaels.com/blueprint. And if you'd love to begin by discovering more about how you're wired to write, you can also take the free writing personality quiz at madisonmichaels.com/quiz. Because the more you understand your wiring, the easier it becomes to build a writing process that supports you instead of one you have to keep forcing yourself into. So this week, my friends, play with this. Notice the sounds that you already associate with your writing and notice whether they help the story come closer. Notice whether they make your writing feel lighter, clearer, and more alive, and then trust that information. Because your writing process is allowed to be personal. Your creative flow is allowed to have its very own unique rhythm. And your soundtrack doesn't have to make sense to anyone else if it helps you write your darn book. And remember, you are the vessel for your story, so let the words flow through you and onto the page. Until next time, my friends, please take care, have some fun exploring sound and your writing, and let's write the darn book together. My friend, I hope today's episode gave you exactly what you needed for your writing journey. And if it did, would you take 30 seconds to share it with another writer who's struggling to start or finish their book? And if you're loving the show, I'd be so grateful if you left a quick review. It means the world to me and truly makes my day to know that this podcast is helping you. And as you head back into your week, I hope you feel more supported and connected to your creativity. And remember, you're a vessel for the story. So let the words flow through you and onto the page. All right, I'm off to refill my cup of liquid gold and go and do a little writing of my own. Take care, and I'll meet you back here in the next episode of Write the Darn Book.